What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the UFC MMA show, presented, of course, by Run Pier Sports, talking the August 13th Vera versus Cruz fight card. 13 fights on tap for Saturday. Of course, it is Friday if you're watching this live. Thank you for joining us. If not, just know we're recording this on Friday afternoon. So if anything changes between now and when you're watching it, obviously we won't have that covered. But we are back talking all the fights, joined by the usual crew, Title Town and Keg. Title, what's going on, man?
What's up, DC? 13 fights, 2 that were supposed to be on last week's card, so we get on this week's card. Only 10 last week, which was disappointing, but man, RPS absolutely crushed it, so it was actually good that those 2 fights were on this card, because we would only had 11 fights, and now we got 13, which is a lot better for DFS. Always love a real crowd. We're in San Diego this week. It always makes the fights a lot more fun, in my opinion. Good sweat. Main event should be fun. Chito Vera, Dominic Cruz, 2 top guys in the top 10. Outside of that, not the most notable names, not too many guys in the rankings, but I think we see some fun fights this week. I'm excited for a couple. David Onama, one of my favorites on this card in the co-main event. Excited he gets a big spotlight there. I think we see some fun fights. Good for DFS. Big prize pools as always. Excited to dive in and talk some fights.
Yeah, should be, I think, an especially fun week for DFS. There's no huge favorites on this card. I think the biggest favorite is Godinez, who's sitting around minus 350 or so.
That and Gabriel Benitez right there, those 2.
Yeah. So we've got a couple, minus 300 to minus 400, but none of the minus 900 where you kind of feel like you have to play the guy in DFS. So I think that makes it more fun, along with the 13 fights. Hopefully we get all 13 fights on the card. I believe all 26 fighters did make weight, which has happened in the last hour or 2. So that's always good. Hopefully these fights all go down without issue. And that leaves us, a lot of fighters to choose from a DFS perspective. We'll talk about all the DFS pricing, strategy, game theory, all that stuff. Title bring that to us. And then from the sports betting side, we do have Keg joining us once again. Keg, what's going on, man?
What's going on, bud? Yeah, can't complain. Last week, it was solid. I'm sure we'll fly past a couple of these fights and get more in depth to others. But yeah, I think Title's right. Looking forward to the card.
Yeah, as Title mentioned, a couple fights that were scheduled to go down last week. We covered those. We'll relitigate those fights. A little bit interesting scenario, especially the Jason Witt and Josh Quinlan. The circumstances surrounding that, I think, are worthy of being discussed. So we'll get there. That's the second fight on the night. But the first fight is Damon Blackshear and Youssef Zalal. It is Zalal, very slight favorite here, sitting around minus 125 on both books. Let's start with you, Keg. From a betting perspective, do you have a strong lean on this fight, which is mostly lined as a coin flip here between Zalal and Blackshear?
Zalal and Blackshear. Youssef Zalal is a prototypical Factory X Muay Thai fighter, I think. Drops in weight from 145 for the first time. He's the better striker, in my opinion, for sure. But that's only when he actually throws his hands. There are times that he just doesn't throw the volume that you would like to see. And that's why he lands about 2.5 significant strikes per minute, which is concerning, but he's definitely the better striker for sure. Definitely a step down in competition for him compared to what he's been fighting. Comes in off the losses to Choi, Ilya Taporia, Woodson. So this feels like it's more his speed, although Blackshear isn't awful by any means. But Zalal has shown at a really young age a gas tank that can go for days, decent fight IQ. And, he's young and he's got a personal growth potential for sure. But, if he can get the takedowns against Blackshear, I think he cruises in this fight. He averages about 2.5 takedowns per 15 minutes. But if he can't get it to the mat, this fight can be competitive, because if you watch Cage Fury, then you know who Blackshear is. He was the bantamweight champion, and I like the kid. He's a Jackson Wink product. He can be explosive at times on the feet. I think that he has power, especially in scrambles. He can find the chin. He's got great top control. He can rain down ground and pound. He's got really nice transitions to the back from the top as well. So all in all, there's a lot to like. I think he's going to be on the UFC roster for a while. Odds open offshore is Zalal -170. Blackshear's taking about 40 cents. I mean, I have a slight lean towards Zalal here. From a betting perspective, I think I could see the fight playing out one of two ways. They're either super tentative and they look at each other for the majority of the first round until they really start to ramp it up in the second, or Blackshear presses the action early, which causes Zalal to react and somebody either gets choked out or knocked out. So the under 1.5 rounds being around +300 is kind of intriguing to me here. I'm not going to lie, but as far as a side, I'll lean Zalal because it's a step down for sure for this kid. But I haven't found another angle that I really like because it's close enough to a coin flip where I think it can go either way.
Yeah. Interested to hear your perspective, Title. I haven't been honestly that impressed with Zalal. He was a guy when he kind of first debuted in the UFC. I expected, I don't know. Listen, he's 3 and I think what is he 3-3? I think he won his first 3, lost those last 3. All 6 of those went to decision. Has not scored 100 fantasy DraftKings points in any of his 6 fights. I don't know. I personally haven't been that impressed by Zalal. Don't know, that much about Blackshear, but it's like Keg at least has some respect for his game, a veteran in the cage. So my initial lean was Blackshear here, but I don't know, from a DFS perspective, I'm definitely not taking Zalal, and maybe depending on what your perspective is on Blackshear, could see going in that direction. But Zalal just doesn't seem to have all that much power to me. Obviously, not a lot of control time, anything like that. So my initial lean is kind of to avoid this one for DFS, but what do you see here between Zalal and Blackshear, Title?
No, yeah, I think Keg broke this fight down really well. I think this fight plays out boring more times than it does not, and that's why I will not have too much of this fight. Again, I'll use one of these guys as the last piece. The mid tier this week isn't very strong in my opinion. I think like the stars and scrubs are out, but once you get to the scrubs, like there's a lot of +200 dogs that you do have to get right, but. As far as Zalal, yeah, I mean, you haven't been too impressed with him, and I definitely can see that, but he's only 25 years old still, and he hasn't fought for over a year, which he has a lot of growing to do. And look at his losses. As Keg said, Sean Woodson, no shame in that. Choi, no shame in that. Ilya Topuria, no shame in that. So it's hard to look good against those 3 guys, and at least you go to decision against all 3. You don't get finished, a split decision over Sean Woodson. Like, I think he's solid. I think he's still improving, 25 years old. And as far as Blackshear, yeah, I mean, I don't think he's a joke at all by any means. He's making his UFC debut. It is worth noting, as Keg did say, Zalal is moving down in weight for his first time. He is fighting at bantamweight. He did make weight. I do like that for sure. Again, I think this fight more so is boring until the feeling out process. Both guys have never been finished. You look at Blackshear, 12-4, all 4 losses by decision. Look at Zalal, 10-5, all 5 losses by decision. So I think both guys are durable. Blackshear wants to get this fight on the mat. 8 of his wins have come by submission. His ground game looks nice. His scrambles look good. His grappling looks good. But I think Zalal can keep this fight on the feet. He's fought better guys. Topuria, you look at how long Sean Woodson is, Choi, all of them I would definitely have against Blackshear. Of course, they are a different weight class, but I think he will be able to keep this fight on the feet. He's still young. He's still improving. And I just don't think we see too much volume. Like you said, Zalal, he hasn't scored over 100. I don't love his upside. He's definitely fine going to a decision. And Blackshear, yeah, I mean, if someone does finish, maybe Blackshear does find a neck at some point like that, but I give too much credit to Zalal, still learning, only 25, fought way better competition. So Zalal by decision is how I see it. There's not enough value to bet on that. I don't love this fight for DFS, though, to start it off. And it's scary. Of course, both these guys could finish. You can't play everyone. Again, I play 150 lineups. I'm going to have some of these guys in both, but my goal is to be underweight on this fight.
Yeah, I'll be hoping this fight doesn't get some spectacular first round finish, and nothing worse than the first fight.
Fight of the night, dead. Roman Dolidze,
and they get like 130 DraftKings points, and you're like, I guess
bringing me back to Roman Dolidze on the Austin, Texas card when I was there. He comes out 2 knockdowns, first round finish, stone dead after the first fight.
never fun. So I'll be hoping for a little bit of a boring one to kick us off between Zalal and Blackshear. Next fight on the card is a rematch, not a rematch, but rescheduled rather from last week. Josh Quinlan rather, and Jason Witt. It was Quinlan that tested positive for, I don't even know what it was exactly.
There was something still in his urine.
Banned metabolite. I don't know quite what that is, but anyway, they are going to run it back here. Interesting though, they are going to fight. I believe it is a 180 catch weight compared to the 170 it was scheduled for. I think they both made weight for 170, but they just didn't want to do another weight cut. Obviously, a week later, makes perfect sense. As far as I'm concerned, not really much of an effect on this fight. I mean, maybe it has one. I just don't know how to, label it on who would have the advantage or anything like that. So yeah, this fight is back on. We'll stick with you, title. Did the odds change at all? Right now, it's sitting Quinlan minus 300 or so, minus 280. Is that what it closed at last week? I assume it's pretty close to that.
I want to say it was like 230 to up to 250.
I was going to say, I didn't think it was quite that high, but I don't know
Yeah.
what change. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't that steep. And to be honest, we broke down this fight last time. I think all three of us thought Quinlan would get knocked out in the first. Jason Witt, Keg's famous quote, he can get knocked out by a cold shower. He had no chin. Quinlan has all the power in the world. Jason Witt, though, he has the wrestling. That's what he has. If he does win this fight, it's going to be multiple takedowns. It's going to be multiple minutes of control time. He's going to score very well in DFS for his price tag. I think the move to, 180, of course, making them cut back-to-back weeks to 170 would do nobody favors. So it's going to be a better fight that they don't have to do that. Does that help Jason Witt's chin a little bit, though? Like, out of everything that the weight at 180 could be, the cut not as hard at 170. You can tell it's a hard weight cut for him all the time. Cardio can drag a little bit. I mean, it can't hurt the chin by any means, up to 10 pounds, not cutting it like that. The cardio, I mean, it can't really get worse in the third round. We see him slow down all the time. So, man, now that I'm seeing this line and all that, it's definitely a dog or pass on the betting perspective. I still think Quinlan does knock him out in the first. I don't think there's enough value to bet that. I still like him in DFS for sure, but like I did last week, I'll definitely be playing some Jason Witt too at this price tag, because his upside, if he wins, he's almost surely optimal. So yeah, Quinlan is still the pick, first round KO. If I have to bet this though, I'm going dog or pass, especially this price seems like only getting steeper and steeper. Quinlan's probably going to close minus 300 plus in this one. And I mean, man, it's a clash of styles. We usually side with the grappler or the wrestler. He's clearly the better wrestler. I still think Quinlan gets it done, but great fight to target in DFS.
Yeah, I don't have much more to add from last week. I think you want one of these two guys on most of your lineups. Again, we think Quinlan probably gets the knockout, but if Witt gets the win, he's going to score really well, especially at that $7,100 price tag on DraftKings. And Keg, I don't know, the rescheduling, the 10 pounds above, if anything, it just makes me think this fight is even more likely to finish inside the distance, just when you add in those extra variables. I don't know, just kind of a hunch there for me. Anything further to add on Quinlan and Witt? I think your big point last time out was Witt's chin is just absolute garbage. So I'm guessing you're still on the Quinlan KO here.
Yeah, I am. But from a DFS perspective, I agree with both you guys and what you said, DC. I think that you almost want this fight in almost every lineup you make, because if Jason Witt wins, it's because he didn't get knocked out and it's a ton of control time. And if Quinlan wins, he's going to knock him out. And I think that's what happens. So it was plus 110. It's now plus 105. I don't really mind the 5 cents. So yeah, I'm still on Quinlan KO here, but I'll have them both in most lineups.
Does Witt have a shot? Go ahead.
Hold on a quick. I saw someone in chat, cousin Fredo. So this fight is only 5 pounds above, unlike the 10 fights, which is not,
Gavin.
That's Gavin. Well, yeah. I mean, it was at 170. This is a catch weight at 180. Witt weighed in at 179.5. So it is 10 pounds above, but Quinlan only weighed in at 175. So it is a 10 pounds above. The catch weight is 10 pounds above, 170 to 180. Quinlan weighed in at 175, though, 5 pounds less than what he could have weighed. So, yeah, I just noticed that, to be honest with you.
That's interesting, because that means, I mean, a week later, like these fighters typically get back.
Put on the weight for sure. On fight day, they put on more than 5 pounds.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's a little weird that he only weighed in at 175. I mean, possibly a pretty big size advantage for Witt here, right?
Yeah, that's interesting.
It is interesting. I mean, he probably had a size advantage in the first fight too, right? Given that
he cuts more.
Yeah. So, and now up to 180. Yeah, maybe more reason to think that Witt could control him if they get to the ground, right? If he outweighs him by a significant amount. So that is interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't let that maybe change your bets or DFS plays too much, but certainly an interesting wrinkle there. We'll see what happens between Quinlan and Witt. We all expect whoever wins this fight to come out with a pretty good DFS score. Next fight on the card, Ode Osbourne and Tyson Nam. It is Osbourne who is the relatively big favorite, especially for this card, sitting between minus 250 and minus 300. Tyson Nam, pretty much just I wouldn't even call him a knockout artist, but that's kind of just what he has, right? A big right hand. He can put someone to sleep, but I haven't been that impressed with Nam outside of, kind of the, I don't know, quintessential puncher's chance type of fighter. So I think Osbourne is gonna walk with this one, but interesting to hear what you guys have to say, Keg. Let's start with you, Osbourne and Tyson Nam.
Yeah, so Tyson Nam comes into the fight off a long layoff. Hasn't fought for any promotion since he fought Matt Schnell like 19 months ago. He's going to be 39 years old in October. The logical question is, like, what does he have left? I think it's a tough question to answer because when he was in his quote unquote prime, I didn't rate him really highly anyway. And I agree with you. He's got a big right hand. That's really about all he has, right? And for Ode Osbourne, I mean, he's a DFS player's dream. He's got 9 of his last 10 fights haven't made it out of the first round. Now, granted, 3 of those 9 fights were because he lost. But regardless, when he steps into a cage that there's going to be fireworks and early. So the odds open Osbourne minus 220. I think he's somewhere around minus 245. From a money line perspective, it's obviously dog or pass, right? Now, I do think Osbourne wins the fight, though, and probably early if history is any indication. So from a betting perspective, I think you take the chance that this fight ends in round 1 the same way that 9 of the last 10 have. Fight starts round 2, is plus 250. Which seems absurd in an Ode Osbourne fight, but it is. So I think that would be the angle that I'd be looking towards. As far as a pick, though, I'll take the more active and young fighter at Osbourne, but I won't be betting aside here.
Yeah, makes sense. This one should be another one title that we do see fireworks early on, as Keg mentioned, between Osbourne and Nam. Osbourne's the pick for me. He's going to be a guy that I want to get a lot of exposure to in DFS. From what I've seen from Tyson Nam, not the best striking defense. I think Osbourne can find the mark here. And like Keg said, I haven't really been that impressed with what I've seen from Tyson Nam, absorbing almost 6 significant strikes per minute, which is a pretty high amount. I don't really see that getting much better. Osbourne, pretty high volume striker with power as well. Go ahead, Title. What do you see between Osbourne and Tyson Nam here?
I see one guy that's a 38-year-old flyweight and one guy that is not. And you know how I look at some of these guys with older age, especially in the lower weight class. I mean, when you're down here in flyweight, bantamweight, all that, it's all athleticism, it's all speed. Like it matters so much. And Tyson Nam, like, he's 38 and he hasn't fought for over 1 year. His last fight, match now, decision loss there. Like, man, Tyson Nam, what does he have? He has a right hand. He hits like a truck when he does land. He doesn't throw much volume, though, so he does have to land when he does throw. I mean, if you're not knocking out Matt Schnell, who has a questionable chin, I mean, after that last fight, man, like he showed a lot of heart for sure, but Ode definitely has a better chin than that. Ode's a better, well-rounded fighter. I mean, Ode Osbourne, you're talking about Tyson Nam striking defense. Osbourne's isn't the best either. Like, he does have some holes in his as well. So can Nam land a big right hand, put him out? I wouldn't be surprised at the end of the day. But outside of that, puncher's chance, like I just think Ode is better everywhere. I think he throws more volume. I think he can hurt Nam. I think the speed advantage is definitely there. I don't really think it hits the ground, but if it does, I give Ode the advantage there. I just think Ode is better pretty much wherever the fight goes at the end of the day. So I can see a knockout. I wouldn't be surprised with the decision either. If it is a decision, you're not going to want this fight, so I wouldn't go all in. But I definitely will have some Ode at 8,700 or at 8,800, excuse me. And he's going to be one of the more forgotten guys up in that range. He's not going to be low owned by any means. But man, we have a lot of killers in that top range that we're going to get to that I think a lot of people are going to play, including the main event. I mean, big favorite main event, only 8,500, like 300 more for Ode right in that range. I could see him coming in 20%, maybe like 19, 22, something around that range. And yeah, if he finishes his fight, Vegas thinks it does. He'd obviously score well. He has a lot of upside. So yeah, Nam, he has a puncher's chance. He wants that right hand, but I think Ode wins these minutes and maybe puts him out. I don't know though. I don't have a strong like lean. Is he going to knock him out? Is he going to get him by decision? That's why I'll play some in DFS and I'll have some fades in DFS.
Yeah, I'll be in on Osbourne here. I think he's going to put it on Tyson Nam with some volume. And I don't know, instead of maybe playing Nam in DFS or even betting that money line, is there really a realistic path for Nam to win this fight other than a knockout? I mean, I don't really think so. So
it'd have to be multiple. It'd have to be like a knockdown in 2 of the 3 rounds and,
sure.
and go that way. I think
always something that can happen, but
yeah,
I would just take the Nam plus 500 to win by KO instead of plus 30 or whatever. Take double the odds, because I mean, definitely if you tell me Nam wins, it's by knockout well over 50% of the time, I think. So I would certainly take that plus 500 over the plus 250 or whatever it is you can get. Not even that, plus 230 I think is the best line out there. So Osbourne is the pick. Obviously Nam has the puncher's chance. Take that plus 500 if you think Nam can get the knockout here, would be my advice. Let's go to the next fight on the card. Gabriel Benitez and Charlie Ontiveros. It is Benitez, one of the bigger favorites on this card. I think the biggest favorite. Big discrepancy between FanDuel and DraftKings in terms of the betting market. DraftKings has him minus 330, FanDuel minus 390. So obviously, price shop, get on over to DK if you want to bet on Benitez. We'll stick with you, title Benitez, Ontiveros. What do you see between these two guys?
I mean, man, we were talking about Jason Witt's chin and how he might have the worst chin in the UFC. Someone might have one up to him in this one, and Charlie Ontiveros. He is 11-8, and all 8 of his losses have come by knockout. DC. I mean, you don't see numbers like that very often.
I wrote down Ontiveros gets knocked out by mosquito bites.
that's worse than a cold shower. So you're on the same page.
Yeah.
I mean, man, you got to give this guy credit, though. He is one of the biggest lightweights you will see. He is monsters he's like Jalen Turner for his, like, you know what I'm saying? Like how he makes 155 is absolutely crazy. He'll always have a big tail to tape advantage. No difference in this fight. He is good offensively. At the end of the day, he's dangerous. Like when he is not asleep because he got knocked out, like he can throw some nasty kicks. He has power in his hands. He can finish fights. But man, like you just can't trust this dude to stay on the feet and to stay alive for pretty much more than 1 round at this point. You look at Mowgli Benitez. I mean, man, you guys know me. I love my kickers at the end of the day. This is one of the best kickers that this sport's really ever seen. Like his calf kicks as nasty as they get. His body kicks as nasty as they get. His hands aren't too bad either at the end of the day. His last fight against David Onama, that was a great fight, man. He got finished in the first round, but he was putting it on Onama. Onama was hurt for a little while. He had to blink out his eye for a little bit. Eventually, he did get finished in that fight. The one concern with Benitez, I'm getting concerned about that chin at this point of his career. He's 34 years old. He's 22-10. 4 of his 10 losses have come by knockout, including the last 2 fights. He has got finished by KO or TKO against Billy Q, David Onama. He should win this fight for sure. I think it could take literally 1 body kick. It could take 2 calf kicks and Ontiveros is done. Like he should get it. But this fight is like what? Minus 550 to end inside the distance. Under 1.5 is like minus 250 or something crazy. You just don't see those numbers. So you need this fight in DFS. And I will get some very, very low owned Charlie Ontiveros in this one because he is dangerous and he has a finishing chance in the first round before he gets finished himself. So I will take a very low owned shot on Ontiveros, and I will definitely have a lot of Gabriel Benitez too. We talked about that Quinlan Witt fight. Oh, that's one of the best fights on the card. this fight might even be better. And I think it is, because I really don't see this getting outside the first round. One of them are getting finished. I think Ontiveros is probably going to get his 9th KO loss. But the ownership, the odds, all say the same thing. So I will have a shot on some of the dog too. Great fight for DFS. Great fight to watch.
Tuttle, does it concern you at all? Benitez, like you mentioned, his biggest strength are his kicks, right? Calf kicks, body kicks. And he's going up against a guy in Ontiveros whose biggest weakness is his chin. But like a bad chin doesn't really.
I mean, Ontiveros is like taking a body shot in the past and just like quit. Like he's just weak pretty much everywhere.
Okay.
He cuts so much weight. Like
he can't take any strikes.
No.
But you see where I'm coming from, where it's like, because it's a lot to ask for to get like a head kick KO, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, his hands can like hurt you on the feet too. Like, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
But like I said, like I think a body kick he could be finished with. I even think 6 leg kicks he could be finished with. Like the dude's just glass, period, at the end of the day. And I don't know how much heart he really has. So
all right, quick question answered there. It is a little odd. At least Best Fight Odds doesn't really have any props up on the US based sports books.
It's just Betway. Yeah. And why I think that is, that's what I had to use it for the over unders and the finished inside the distance. Like they don't want to hang. Like it's like a -600 to finish. Like
there's not a lot for me to add because we don't have any kind of lines. Right. I don't know why they won't put them up, but I agree with everything Title said. 14 finishes between these two guys. I have a hard time seeing this going over 1.5 rounds. So I think
that's why the books aren't throwing the lines out at the end of the day. Like they just, I don't know. I could be wrong.
Solid parlay piece at -230 or whatever it is. To get the price down on another fighter if you need to, because I agree with Title. I think it's probably not going to get out of the first.
Title, any chance we get lower ownership than we should because of the fight props not being out there?
No, I don't think because of that reason as much. I think it would. Yeah, I think it's the 9,300. Benitez is expensive. You still got to find dogs. Benitez is most expensive on the card. So there's like other guys that are $100 lower, a couple hundred, even though Cheeto Vera fight $800 that could easily score more. So I think the price keeps it down a little bit. Then the Ontiveros, no one's going to be on that side. I don't know necessarily as much about that line because like you can still find like Betway, like I said, the one.
Yeah, as long as there's one out there, people will see it. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple. I think people will find like at least one, and it's just so inflated where it's hard to ignore. So I think it's more so because of the pricing and the slate.
Last question, Title. More exposure to this fight or Witt and Quinlan, do you think?
I think I'm gonna go this fight. I'm gonna try and get more on this fight, but the pricing can change a little bit.
Yeah, sounds like you'll have a lot of both.
But I think Witt's more live. I like Witt more than Ontiveros, but I think ownership's gonna do that as well. So these are my two favorite fights to target.
Got it. We'll move on from Ontiveros. Benitez should be a good fight from a DFS perspective. Should be some fireworks in that one. I doubt we see a judge's decision. Let's go to the women's division. Longtime veteran Angela Hill takes on Lupita Godinez. Godinez, one of the other big favorites on this card, sitting around -350 or so. Title will stick with you. Godinez, Angela Hill. What do you see here?
I see one as a prospect the UFC is trying to build in Lupita Godinez, and I like her a lot because I played her a lot in DFS. What do we like, DC? We like wrestlers, we like top control, we like big scores. You pull up her game log, she can go to decision and still break the slate. She put up like 127 her last time against Carnelossi. Yeah, I mean, that was the Donald Cerrone Lozon card, the Oliveira card, so it hurts to think about. But I had a ton of Godinez in that fight, and it's going to be no different on this one because 9,200, people are going to see this fight's the most likely to go to decision. Angela Hill does not get finished. I do not think that changes in this fight. I think we see a decision. But man, 15 minutes, if Lupita wins, it's because of the takedowns. It's because of the top control. We know how well that can score in DFS. It's better than a first round knockout at times. So I think Lupita comes in, averages 5.37 takedowns per 15 minutes. Angela Hill has decent takedown defense at 77%. She's a vet in the sport. She's fought everybody. She wants to keep it on the feet. She throws a lot of volume, but I mean, not too much as power. Like it's really not going to finish anyone at the end of the day. If we're talking about a betting, when we get to keg, if I had to pick a bet or a side for betting, I would definitely go dog or pass on this one and take the plus money, no doubt. But in DFS, one girl has 130 point upside with the wrestling in that. Yeah. And Angela Hill, I mean, even if she wins, you're hoping for 75, which at the end of the day, 75 for her price tag could be enough if it's a favorite heavy card for sure. So I'm not going to have none in 150, but I think I'm going to take up more shots on other dogs in 20 entry that do have the upside if they do win. A Witt, Ontiveros, other stuff where I'm trying to chase that with less lineups and not get to her as much. And I will have Loopy. I'm going to try and get overweight on the field on Loopy because don't think she comes in too highly owned. We know the upsides there, the wrestling. So it's weird. Betting and DFS, sometimes they are different. Betting, I'm going dog or pass with the plus money. DFS, I'm chasing the upside with the wrestling and Loopy.
I did skip a couple fights there, so we'll go back to those two after we finish Godinez and Angela Hill here. But I will say, from a DFS perspective, nothing better than the women's MMA fights when you're on the right side of the women's wrestler who's just laying on top, getting those feather punches, to the body, just racking up the points, racking up the control time, the takedowns, and you get that like 127 for a boring ass fight, and you're off to the races. So I'm with you. Makes a lot of sense with Loopy Godinez there. Keg, let's go to you for Godinez and Angela Hill. What do you see?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Title said. Angie's basically a 500 fighter now, which is unfortunate because she's been on the wrong end of 3 or 4 really bad split decision losses. But this is where she is. I'm also high on Loopy with Title. I think that here's the thing. I don't even think it's dog or pass, right? Because I think if you believe that Angela Hill's takedown defense at 77% is going to keep her on the feet, then there is a 60% chance that this will be a split decision. Well, that's just the truth based on her career, right? And you can get that at 4 to 1 plus 375 rather than taking the plus 270 there. But I will say, man, I mean, like that 77% takedown defense, that's only 22 takedowns allowed on 95 attempts. That is ridiculous.
Does her last fight concern you a little bit though? Like Jana Robo was able to get her down 3 times, and she is nothing like
I agree.
She is nothing like Loopy and how aggressive she's going to be with the takedowns.
So I'll tell you what, like my favorite bet, I'm on the split, obviously, but my favorite bet that I do like in this fight is her to win by unanimous decision at -115. Because I do think Loopy probably will get the takedowns, and you're right. It's really hard to finish Angie. She probably won't do it, and she'll probably win a unanimous decision. But if Angela Hill can stay on her feet in this fight, Loopy's good enough on the feet where this is almost a guarantee to be a split decision. And if she can't, then at least you're on Loopy unanimous decision at -115 anyway. So you sprinkle the split and you bet that. That's probably what I'm going to do here. Aside from that, I don't see anything.
Makes sense. It sounds like Title and I, and probably Keg being on Loopy on the DFS side of it. She does have a path to a really big score here, even at that $9,200 price tag. We'll stay in the women's division as we jump back a couple fights. Cynthia Calvillo and Nina Nunes will do battle here. It is Calvillo that is the slight favorite, -200 or so, I guess maybe more than the slight favorite against Nina Nunes. I don't know. I have trouble getting excited for this one. I think Calvillo will try to get this one to the ground Title, whereas Nunes, we kind of know she's a stand-up fighter. I don't necessarily see big DFS scores coming out of this one personally, but interested to hear your take. Title, go ahead. Calvillo and Nina Nunes.
Yeah, well, we broke down this fight. I think it was a little over a month ago. It was on the RDA Fizzy fight, and then it got scrapped. It got moved to this one. I mean, I wrote because fights that get canceled, I do like copy and paste my whole breakdown. I've learned because I've had to redo them multiple times. So I looked back and I was like, my first sentence I really put in the playbook was both of these girls could be cut already at the end of the day. I mean, Calvillo's quit multiple times in the octagon, which you really hate to see when you're backing someone. And Nina Nunes, I mean, obviously she's with Amanda Nunes, like the baby and all of that. She just has had so much other stuff in her life that like, where is fighting at the end of the day, like on her scale of importance? And I really don't know the answer. I mean, look at what against Mackenzie Dern when she came back, She looked awful in that fight. So two girls that at the end of the day, I want to fade going at it. I'm with you, DC. I'm not going to have too much of this fight because A, I have to pick the winner, right? And then B, you hope they score enough in a fight that is supposed to go to decision. I will say for DFS wise, I will lean Calvillo just because if she wins the wrestling, like she wants to get the fight on the mat. However, if I'm betting this fight, I'm going dog or pass 100% on this fight because Nina Nunes, it's literally just like the last fight. Nunes wants to keep the fight on the feet. She has solid takedown defense, 76%. Literally, this is the exact same fight pretty much from the last, except two different girls. But Calvillo wants to fight on the mat. Man, like her offensive wrestling isn't great though. Can she stay on top for periods of time if she gets it there? I don't even know that answer. Nina Nunes, if the fight's on the feet, I think she is the better striker. I think she probably will win a decision. She is dog money, but what's the upside of Nina Nunes in this fight for keeping on the feet? I think similar to Angela Hill, not very high, and she has 7,900, so I don't want much there. Calvillo, if she wins 8,300, could be multiple takedowns, could be all of that, but I really just don't see her going out and dominating Nunes on the mat for 15 minutes. So my pick, I'm going to say Nunes because the dog or pass at the plus money. I will have a little more Calvillo and DFS, but I don't like this fight for DFS or bathroom break fight. That's what I called it last time we were talking.
Bathroom break, snacks, beer, whatever you want to call it, between Calvillo and Nunes. I agree basically with everything you said, Title. Calvillo, if you're playing one in DFS, I think that makes the most sense. Maybe she can get, 3 or 4 takedowns and control time and get there. But Nunes at 7,900, man, I mean, I just don't, I just don't see her getting there, even in a win, right? Even if she gets the upset, I would be surprised if she ended up on the optimal, especially on a card with 13 fights where, the biggest favorite on the card is minus 400. We're probably going to see some dogs come through at a lower price point than Nunes is, right? And unless things really go crazy and she gets the first round KO, which seems pretty unlikely to me, it's going to be hard for her to get there as kind of a pure striker. So
she was 7,700 a month ago too, and the line was even shorter than it is now, which shows you why do I want to pay $200 more?
The only thing in Nunes' favor, Keg, I would say, is that Amanda Nunes, who obviously, they're in the same camp, training together, and she did look pretty good, right, in that return title fight against Pena. So maybe Nunes is kind of remotivated, same way Amanda was. Obviously, not nearly the same caliber fighter. So
just take your dog money and bet it, then, right?
Yeah, exactly. It seems like a little bit of a stretch, but if I had to make a case for Nina Nunes, I guess that would be it. Not a super strong case by any means. Keg, Calvillo, Nunes, what do you see?
Yeah, I mean, she looks. Listen, if you're betting aside in this fight, you need a sponsor because from a betting perspective, I mean, you just stay as far away from this fight as you can, right? But if you had to try to break it down, you can't back Cynthia Calvillo. Title said she quit on the stool. You can't back Nina Nunes off how bad she looked in her return against Mackenzie Dern. So I think that you basically just avoid this fight altogether. I guess I'll pick Calvillo only because she's been more active. But yeah, I mean, I'll be on the split. But
I was waiting for it.
Yeah, I'll be on the split, but I'm not betting aside. No way.
This is a good split decision fight for sure. I'm with that.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah. We could see a boring split decision, and we'll come back with our cups full and ready for the next fight on the card. And we go to the big boys in the heavyweight division. Martin Buday and Lukasz Brzeski. It is Buday who is a pretty big favorite in this one, minus 300 or so. This one, as is often the case between heavyweights, favored to finish inside the distance. Keg, we'll stick with you with the big boys. What do you see here?
Yeah, I don't love either of these guys. Neither of them are UFC caliber fighters, in my opinion. I think Buday basically.
I feel like we say that a lot about a lot of heavyweights.
Yeah,
it's a weak division for sure.
Yeah, that's true. I think Buday has very good cage control because he's strong in the clinch. He makes his opponents carry his weight, and he'll throw solid knees while he's in the clinch. There isn't much more than that, though. He's subpar on his feet, I think, when he doesn't have control of somebody's body. And for Brzeski, like, he looks solid on Contender Series, although he got the Quinlan suspension for 9 months, I think, for failing the drug test after Contender Series. But he's given up 30 pounds here. He fights behind a solid jab, but he's a big liability defensively on the feet because he's super hittable. But his cardio, I think, is probably questionable. But we don't know much about his fight IQ because I haven't seen a ton of them yet. So listen, the odds open offshore -200, but Buday's now like -275. What usually happens when two low-level heavyweights fight, right? It's normally an awful, really boring, shitty, sloppy fight that goes longer than you think it will. And I think that can happen here because of how content that Buday is to clinch against the cage. And when that happens, you're just going to hear the ticking of the clock. So if I'm betting this fight, forget aside, I think that the over 1.5 rounds -175 is a great parlay piece. And I also think that fight ends by decision at +155 isn't a bad bet here, because how these two guys fight, I could definitely see this going the full 15. I'll pick Buday though.
Yeah, all right. Buday and the fight goes to decision. Title that would obviously not be likely not super great for DFS if these two do go to decision and you're on them. They do actually, small sample size, but fairly high volume, at least in terms of heavyweights are concerned. Again, just a few fights there, so maybe you don't want to take that with a grain of salt a little bit, if you will. But yeah, Buday, Brzeski, what do you see here, Title?
Yeah, no, everything Keg said, I agree with 100%. Buday's fine. I mean, probably more than fine. Like, it kind of like seems like he wants to at this point. Fight the boring fight. I mean, he uses his size. He gets it against the cage, just grinds on you. Now, what that does score in DFS, the cage control that looks like nothing's happening because nothing is counted as control time in DFS, which is worth noting. He is -110 to finish. So I do agree with Keg. Like, I think this could very, very well be a boring fight. Two guys that I don't really think are too great, that are really UFC caliber. This is what is the big thing that stuck out to me in this fight, though. Buday always weighs in at the heavyweight limit. He has to cut down to get there. You weighed in at 266 as much as you can. Brzeski, on the other hand, he is a very, very light heavyweight. 236.5 he weighed in at. And that is just trouble in a fight where the opponent wants to use his weight and his size and just maul you around and just control you and clinch you and make it a dirty fight. Like, you don't want to be weighing 30 pounds less on weigh-in day, let alone who knows what Buday is going to walk in the cage at tomorrow. So, yeah, I totally get what Keg says. I think Buday fights the easier fight, gets it against the cage, gets the top or the clinch time and all that. Now, if Buday can get this fight on the map, I think it's probably all she wrote, because he is so much bigger. He does have some pretty good ground and pound. This Brzeski guy at the end of the day, so he's making his UFC debut. Man, I couldn't find too much footage on him. Again, he did win that Contender Series fight, got suspended like you talked about with the failed drug test. He has some power in his hands, it looks like, as most heavyweights do. His cardio looks like a big question mark. Longer this fight goes, I think the more it favors Buday. Like, man, yeah, at 7,300, I play so many lineups. Yeah, I'm going to have a little Brzeski just because it's heavyweights, lower level heavyweights, big dog. If he wins, he'd score well. But I think more likely than not, Buday just makes it boring. Clinch time, -110 to finish, though. That's why, like, yeah, 8,900. If you're only playing 10 lineups, I don't think you get there, DC, for sure, because you like Ode Osbourne. You like a lot of those guys. But when you see a -110 to finish, you're going to get the clinch control time. If he does get a finish, he could score well. So, and it's heavyweights. There's so much variance at the end of the day. So, yeah, Buday I'll say decision. I'll go with Keg, but I don't feel too comfortable. It can go so many ways, this fight can.
Yeah, I'm looking at Keg that Buday to win by decision +300 on FanDuel right now. Just kind of grind him out on the cage. He can kind of fight use his weight. I don't know. That number looks pretty good to me. Thoughts on Buday to win by decision at +300?
Yeah, I don't mind it. I think Title's right, though. The one big concern here what is the fact that he's given up 30 pounds, which is not great. But man, if this gets it midway to the second round and they're slightly gassed and it's really starts to slow down to a halt, man, I really think that has a great shot to cash.
Yeah, I like it. I would much rather take that plus 300 decision than lay the minus 280 or so to win. That makes much more sense, at least from where I'm sitting. Let's move on to what should be, I think, a more exciting fight. Longtime veteran Gerald Meerschaert going to fight Bruno Silva, knockout artist, big power from Silva against a guy who's been in a lot of fights and Meerschaert, and whose chin seems to be fading. So you do see Silva sitting around minus 300 or so this fight. Also, Keg is favored heavily to finish inside the distance. I think Silva gets the job done via KO. That's not a hot take or anything. He's favored to do so, sitting around minus 150 to win by KO. And frankly, that's kind of how I see this one going down. Silva, Meerschaert. Let's start with you, Keg. What do you see?
Listen, it's hard to argue having that take in this. Yeah. I get it. I think that this is as big a clash of styles as you can have in a fight. I would have to check. I don't know the last time we've seen somebody with 20 knockout wins fight somebody with 26 wins by submission. It
probably never happened.
Right? I mean,
it's impressive on both sides.
Right. So Bruno Silva, heavy hands, explosive striker from range, solid footwork, and he really relies on finishing. I think 19 of his 22 wins are by KO. If he can't finish you, the cardio starts to deplete a bit, where there's not a ton left, I think, late in fights. And I think that can be a concern for him if he can't put GM3 away, especially once he ramps the motor up, once he realizes you were tired, like Gerald Meerschaert does better than a lot of fighters. I will say, though, that the gas tank looked better for Silva in his last fight, even though it was in a losing effort. But the knock on Silva is he's one-dimensional. And while we've seen him in a few grappling exchanges, he will be entirely out of his depth should the fight hit the mat Saturday night. Because GM3 is the polar opposite of Bruno Silva. 26 wins, we just said, by sub. And there isn't really much left to say after that. He will be looking to get the fight to the mat, wet blanket Silva with top control until he works for the openings to get a sub, period. So in 49 fights, Gerald Meerschaert's only been knocked out 3 times. So I think he gets a bad rap for not being quite as durable as he actually is. I think he's more durable than people give him credit for. Okay, yeah, that Chimaev KO was crazy. But if you throw that out, man, it's really hard to put him away.
What about Ian Heinisch?
Yeah, Ian Heinisch too. That
was the worst look.
That was the back-to-back knockouts. But that's basically 2 of his 3 knockouts in 49 fights. So I think obviously from a money line perspective, it's dog or pass. I understand why the public is going to be probably looking towards Silva by KO. I can't lay that price on a KO prop, but for me, how can the submission prop on Gerald Meerschaert be 5.5 to 1 in a fight where he's not plus 550 on the money line when it is legitimately his only path to victory? Because he doesn't throw enough volume on the feet, in my opinion, to win a decision anyway. So, I mean, I think that's it feels like a no-brainer based on the value to the money line. So I have a slight lean towards that. And aside from that, it would be a pass for me because I do think Silva can knock him out. I just can't lay that price.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Tyson Nam fight where Meerschaert kind of has the one path to decision. For Meerschaert, it's obviously the submission, Tyson Nam, the KO. But in both fights, you get basically double the odds from the money line up to what seems like their only reasonable path. I think Meerschaert's got a better chance of a decision win, if he can get the takedowns, but maybe can't get the submission than Tyson Nam does.
That's fair.
Yeah. So maybe not quite all the way there, but still, I get where you're coming from, Keg, getting that 5.5 to 1 submission on Meerschaert. If you want to go in that direction, I'm not sure I'll pull the trigger there myself, but it does make sense logically. Title Silva, Meerschaert. How do you see this one?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely makes sense for the betting, but I'm on your side, DC. I mean, man, Bruno Silva's got as much power in his hands as anyone. I agree with you on GM3's chin. I think it's fading faster than some people think. The Ian Heinisch one, really, like, man, getting Ian knocked out like that to Ian Heinisch. Like, Hamzat won, fine. Hamzat's one of the scariest dudes there is. He lands like that, but when Bruno Silva hits you, you'll probably feel like when Hamzat hits you. And GM3, I think, is going to struggle to get the takedowns. Got to expect Bruno to fight a smart game plan. Could see Gerald trying to pull guard, roll on his back for a while. Hopefully Bruno doesn't follow him there. And I think he puts him away pretty quickly. But yeah, great fight to target DFS. If GM3 wins, I think it's a sub. If Bruno wins, I think it's a knockout, but I have a pretty strong lean that it's going to be a knockout.
Yeah, I'll have a lot of Silva. I'll probably sprinkle in some Meerschaert as well, just because at that price point, 7,200, if he does get that submission, probably going to be a guy that you want in your lineups.
How I'm doing it this week. Again, I'm not going to give too much information. It's in the playbook, but I like a lot of favorites. But you also can like Nam with the knockout, like he has that pad. GM3 with the sub. Like I'm going to sprinkle in more dogs than I usually do, but cap them because I don't think like 12% owned. I'm going to cap them at max percent or something like that because I don't want 20 plus of a GM3 or a Nam who I think is going to lose. But because you know that past there, like you don't want to have 0 and your night just be over if they do what you know they can, but you don't think is going to happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we'll see more spread out ownership this week in DFS than we typically do. It makes sense with
it's a good card for DFS.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be a fun one. I hope we get all 13 fights because I think a lot of different routes to the top for this card. Let's go to the main card, the final 5 fights. Before we do, if you do want to join us over at Run Pier Sports, if you enjoy the show, if you want titles playbook, if you want all the baseball stuff, we've obviously got the NFL coming up here quickly, PGA, we've got soccer going on, tennis, every sport that they offer DFS, we provide the DFS information betting wise. Keg's got his special package, live betting package, all that stuff. Good stuff over at Run Pure Sports. You can use the promo code NFL15. We're not sure how long that promo code is going to last, but it will get you not only 15% off your first month's payment, but 15% off the life of your subscription, so long as you stick with us and don't cancel at any point. So again, that's NFL15, 15% off for life. If you want to join us at RPS, it's a great time to do so. Take advantage of that promo code because I don't know, unlike some other companies, we don't offer these promo codes, honestly, all that often. So take advantage. If you've been on the fence, I don't think you'll regret it. Join us over at runpuresports.com. All right, let's get to the main card for this fight night. This one is also a reschedule. Ariane, Lipski, and Priscila Cachoeira. It is Lipski that is the favorite, as she was last week, sitting around -200. We obviously talked about this fight last week. Title, do you see any differences a week later between these two?
Man, this one's really interesting. So it was supposed to be at 125 last week. This fight's now at 135. Both fighters did make weight. Lipski missed by 2.5 pounds, and it was canceled because I guess she went to the hospital. I guess she had COVID during her camp. That obviously did not treat her very well. It probably hit her pretty decent, enough for her to miss weight. And that just starts getting questions in my head, like, man, like a close woman's fight in my mind that could go either way. You get these problems with Lipski. Now you somehow see the price higher than what it was last week, which makes no sense at all to me. Sitting about -200. You see DraftKings prices. Lipski went up 300 in pricing. Cachoeira went down 300 in pricing. All of that stuff, man, like I'm leaning to the dog now, and I don't love it. I think maybe a lot of it does have to do with I like a lot of favorites. I see a dog at 7,500 already in a close fight. You know, Zombie Girl Cachoeira is going to fight for your money. She always does. She's going to throw haymakers. She's going to be live. Yeah, she absorbs 8 significant strikes per minute. That's what my big thing last week was. How can I bet on a girl or back a girl that eats that many shots, which you just never see at the end of the day? But I hate so many dogs now with all this stuff with Lipski and coming out. You know, Cachoeira is going to fight for your money. 7,500. I like a lot of favorites. I hate doing it, but I mean, I guess I'm going to switch my pick and I'm going to get more Cachoeira than I will Lipski. I mean, 8,700 with all the killers in that range, or 7,500 with Nam, GM3, a bunch of people I think are going to lose. Like, I just kind of forced to, what it feels like to me. So Cachoeira, I guess, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, makes sense with the missing weight, and then bout gets canceled. There's just a week later. I mean, you certainly wouldn't think you'd be able to, if it was, if you're in bad enough shape that you have to get the fight canceled, you wouldn't think a week later you'd be fully recovered. So that is interesting, especially with the line moving further in Lipski's favor. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense logically to me. Keg, what do you make of that line movement, and has your opinion changed at all in this fight in the last week?
Yeah, I mean, I think the both of you guys bring up interesting points. If they were both 100% healthy, I would lean Ariane Lipski for sure. But at the price, it's always going to be dog or pass at this level of MMA. So I'll agree with Title and say it's probably dog or pass here. And I think we got a shot to get the split prop home at 4.5 to 1.
All right. Yeah, that's Lipski, Cachoeira. Yeah, should be interesting. We'll see how Lipski looks after the fight cancellation last week. But I'm with you guys. I think it makes sense to take a little dog money on Cachoeira in that one. Let's get to the next fight on the card. It is Azamat Meerschaert, who's a relatively modest favorite, sitting around -150 over Devin Clark. Keg, will stick with you. Meerschaert and Devin Clark. Go ahead.
Okay, so Meerschaert was supposed to debut back in 2017 for the UFC, right? But for some reason, I'm not sure, that falls through. Finally gets his chance last year on Contender, and he made it count. Looked good over Scheffel. Now, he gets the UFC contract. Then he goes out and fights Tafan Nchikwe in a fight that he was definitely down 2 rounds until he got the 3rd round knockout with a flying knee, right? So the version of Meerschaert that we saw against Tafan is really like half the guy that we saw in his Sambo days against killers like Kudalaba and other people. He just didn't look like the same dude when he fought in March. But if you follow the MMA scene, you've known about this guy for years. And I think, man, I've been struggling all week, but I think you have to throw away that performance last time out and judge him on the way he's really looked the last 5 years. But I think it's hard to do. He's got substantial power. His hand speed's way faster than you would think for his frame. The cardio has held up relatively well throughout his career, but it did look suspect when he fought in March. But he's at his best for sure when he has double underhooks against the cage. He's working for takedowns. He's getting side control to either work a submission or ground you to dust, right? Now, Clark, the big knock on Devin Clark is it always seems like he wants to be anywhere other than an MMA fight when he's getting punched in the face. That's the knock on him. But former judoka, former JUCO national wrestling champion, and he will want to get Meerschaert against the cage, wear him down, and work for takedowns, right? Striking isn't awful by any means, but he wants to get you to the ground. So odds open offshore -175 on Meerschaert. And since then, I think Clark's taken about 30 cents maybe. So the biggest question that you have to answer in this fight is, when these two guys are against the cage working in the clinch, who will get the takedowns? Because chances are the winner of those exchanges wins the fight. I think it's a tough one to call. Based on history, I would say Meerschaert, but I am concerned about his cardio. I think that the recent change for Devin Clark moving to Trevor Whitman at elevation rates highly for me. I lean that Clark is going to win the wrestling exchanges based on the cardio. If that's the case, Meerschaert feels knockout or bust to me. And he can certainly tap that chin on Clark because he's been knocked out twice. But all in all, Devin Clark's been relatively durable. So I'm going to pick the dog here. I don't feel great about it. Probably won't be on a side unless the boys on the live show could talk me into something. I do think that probably the best parlay piece on the board this week is the over 1.5 rounds minus 180 in this fight for sure. I'll lean the dog though at plus 130, whatever he is.
Yeah. I'm on Clark here. I'll take the wrestler, like you mentioned, against Meerschaert. I just too many question marks for me. Not that Devin Clark's a perfect fighter. I will say, Title, I kind of expect a slower fight here. Maybe not a ton of volume. Like Keg said, we could see some grinding up against the cage where they both, exchange control time, but nobody's really scoring super well. And I don't see a heavy volume of strikes being landed in this fight, honestly, either. So I do like Clark as the dog, but from a DFS perspective, I don't know. I mean, Keg is on the over 1.5 rounds. I like that bet. So I'm not super excited about this fight, at least for DraftKings. Meerschaert 8,400, Clark 7,800. I could see even the winner of this fight disappointing DFS wise. What do you see, Title, between Meerschaert and Devin Clark?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying with this mid-tier, like earlier in the Zalal Blackshear fight. Like, I didn't love that. That fight's in the mid-tier. You look at this fight's in the mid-tier, and the only other fight in the mid-tier, when I say mid-tier, that's 8,400 to 7,800. Cynthia Calvillo, Nina Nunes in the mid-tier. So, like, this is my favorite mid-tier fight, but I totally agree with you guys because it's supposed to finish where the other two are not supposed to finish. But yeah, I mean, neither throw too much volume on the feet. I think Devin Clark's going to want to wrestle as he usually does in most fights, averages over 2.5 takedowns per 15 minutes. Keg talked about it, his wrestling background. Meerschaert is so interesting though, man. So he comes in the UFC 10-0. I was definitely all over him in that fight against Stefan, and I got bailed out. It's like, he looked awful. He threw no volume. He did not impress me one bit. He catches him with the flying knee for a bailout. But as Keg mentioned earlier, before he got to Clark, earlier in his breakdown, he goes, do you look at that last fight or do you trust the rest of his whole career and what he has done? Sure. And I've went back and forth on this fight all week too. I mean, it's one of the closest line fights on the card. My logic is absolutely dumb. Do not trust me. But when everybody and their mom seems to be on one side, and this week it's Devin Clark, you see it with the money, with the move, you have a hard time picking dogs on this card. So you just easy to, like, Devin Clark against a guy that looked awful in his second fight. Like, it all just makes total sense in the world. I've been on that side so many times and they just lose. And it's like, when everyone's on it, it feels too good to be true. So for all of those reasons, $600 less than DraftKings too, I could see him being more popular. I don't have too much conviction on that, but I would not be surprised one bit. I was so heavy on Meerschaert in his last fight. I'm just not going to jump off just yet. So I'm going to go with him. He has power in his hands. He can finish this fight. Not very confident. I will probably have very similar exposure in DFS to this one, but I totally agree with you guys. Like, man, the pricing, because it's in the mid-tier and the mid-tier sucks, you want to play it. And maybe this fight just gets over-owned because of that aspect. And I can easily see a decision. I wouldn't be surprised, but I'll say Meerschaert gets it done. Confidence 1.
Yeah, I think both these fighters will have some ownership, but yeah, I get what you're saying, but it's going to mostly be a fade from where I'm sitting. Let's go to the next fight on the card. Back to the women's division. Yasmin Lucindo and I'm sure their name's not actually the same, but yeah, and Yasmin. When I got to the second one, I was like, I must have mispronounced the first one.
I'm just gonna go Yasmin and then Lucinda. That's how I'm gonna say it. Yasmin the first name and then Lucinda the last name. We'll go with that. It easy.
Yeah. Warigi is sitting around minus 200 or so. First question, Keg. Neither of these women have a fight in the UFC. I'm a little curious why this fight is on the main card.
I don't have an answer for
23 and 20 years old too, DC. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Youngest fighter in the UFC, I think.
Has to be
Lucindo. Well, yeah, these fight at 115. Okay, I was hoping you were going to have a good answer why this fight is so far up the card. Apparently not. I don't know. But anyway, break it down for us either way.
Yeah, so while Reagan looks like she can crack, She has fast hands, some power. I think when she smells blood in the water, she looked like she could put somebody away, which is solid for 23 years old. On the ground, the takedown defense didn't look awful, but all in all, she was impressive for where she is in her career. Lucindo, also a baby, 20 years old, but she does have 17 pro fights already to her credit, which is a little crazy. She's got 8 knockout wins, 14 KO wins between both these girls, but Lucindo doesn't seem as evolved on the feet. She will want to get the fight to the ground for sure while she works for a stoppage by either way. But I've also liked what I've seen from her. So the odds open offshore were Waregi minus 260. Last I checked, she was minus 205. Listen, both these girls are young. They're coming from the regional scene. There are a ton of questions. That said, I will always say dog or pass in this spot.
How do you not take a dog here? Just take the plus 175. I don't know.
I'll always say dog or pass in this spot. But if I'm just picking who wins, I'm gonna say Waregi. And I think that you could sprinkle a little on the KO prop at like plus 280, but obviously I'm going to be on the split prop strong with these two girls.
Yeah, this is a good one for the split prop. No question about it. Title, let's go to you. Waregi, again, pretty big favorite here over Lucindo. Plus 175, the best number you can get on Lucindo over at DraftKings right now. I'll be watching that and maybe take the biggest plus number I can find closer to fight time. What do you see here, Title, between Waregi and Lucindo?
I see a fun fight, man. And like, if I'm trying to make a case on why Dana put this on the main card, two girls making their UFC debut, 23 years old and 20 years old. And you look at the tape on both, like they look pretty decent at the end of the day. Like I'm expecting them to have pretty long UFC careers. So that has to be why Dana sees two girls that want to go out there and scrap. Waregi. See, that's why I just wanted to say, I've tried this name so many times, I never can get it right. Yasmin, that's what I'm going to call her. And then Lucindo is the dog. So Yasmin, she cracks, man. Like her on the feet, she absolutely cracks. Like Gomez Juarez trains with her too. She came out with the knockout. Like they got guys, you don't see people at 115 in the women's. I mean, you don't get men's in 115 anyway, but in the 115 division and strawweight division, crack like her. So
you don't think that's worth a sprinkle at plus 280, Title?
No, I do. My pick is her by knockout, which is so weird to think at the end of the day. I think Lucindo is also good. She wants to fight on the mat at the end of the day, and she looks to have pretty solid wrestling, pretty solid grappling. Like she wraps the legs like Khabib does when I was watching some tape. Like I love when I see fighters do that. It's a cheat code. But man, she's only 20 years old. Like on the feet, she is nowhere near Yasmin on the feet. And I think Yasmin can keep this on the feet. She's 8-0. I think she makes it 9-0. 6 of her 8 wins are by knockout. I like this fight a lot for DFS. And it is very weird to see or to hear that at 115, a woman's fight that is supposed to go to decision. I think ownership kind of reflects that. Like who wants to pay 8,700 for Yasmin with all the killers around? 7,500 Lucindo, it makes a little more sense. But man, I think we see a good fight. I think we see two girls come out there and brawl. Yasmin's my pick to win by KO. If Lucindo wins, it's probably going to be wrestling. It's going to be a lot of output. It's going to be on the optimal. Sign me up for this fight, man. I don't watch it be the most boring fight ever, but I have high hopes for this one, actually.
It almost can't be when you watch the tape.
Yeah, that's what I saw.
You talked me into getting some action on this, and partly because it's a little bit puzzling why it's on the main card. There's a good chance, I think. I mean, it's there for a reason, right? It's an active decision to put it on the card. And I don't know which one of the two, but I'm guessing Dana and the UFC has high hopes for at least one of these two.
I think both. I think maybe they really
both.
Do.
Yeah. And so, maybe we see a better fight than most people are expecting. And, no real data in the UFC on either of these two fighters. It's still expected to go to decision. You'll probably get both these women pretty low owned, I think, from a DFS perspective. So it makes sense. Lucindo, like you said, we expect if she does pull out the upset to be, at least partially due to wrestling. She'd probably score well. And then Waraki, sounds like you guys think she's got some real power in her hands. So the fight could end early that way too. So yeah, perhaps a more exciting fight than I initially gave it credit for. Will be interesting to see. Anytime a 23-year-old and a 20-year-old are fighting in the UFC on a main card, you gotta take notice and see what they got. So I guess looking forward to this one, certainly more than the other women's.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Well, the Priscila Cachoeira fight, the zombie girl always is a fun fight, but this one should be a good scrap.
Yeah, should be a good one. Let's get to the last two fights on the card. David Onama, another big favorite, minus 330 or so over Nate Landwehr. We'll stick with your title, Onama Landwehr. What do you see here?
Onama's my boy, baby. I'm excited for this one. I liked Onama ever since he came to the UFC. Took the fight on short notice, up a weight class against Mason Jones. Yeah, what Mason Jones just did last fight to Ludovic Klein doesn't look as great, but what a fight that was, man. Like, what an absolute fight from Onama. I mean, the dude has power in his hand. Looks like he has cardio, can fight off his back foot, can pressure. He comes out, he submits Armfield his last fight. His opponent dropped out on short notice. He gets short notice Armfield, who I just saw. Armfield actually has a fight booked, I think against Christian Rodriguez, I believe I saw, which I also liked him. Like, that should be a pretty good scrap. Armfield fought.
Do you think he was losing that fight up until he got the sub?
No, but it was a competitive fight for sure. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if someone had it 1-0 Armfield. I wouldn't argue it. I had it for Onama. But I mean, I was impressed with Armfield at the end of the day. I thought he looked really good. Onama then shows off his grappling, which usually is known for a striker as much. And he gets the job done. Like, I'd really like to see the Gabriel Benitez fight was a very good fight. It showed that he can take a shot. He'll fight for your money. He has power, all of that. You look at Nate Landwehr, man, talk about fighting for your money. This dude will fight for your money. He will make every fight fun. He's all grit. He will come forward. He walks, pressure fighter, tries to break you with the cardio, tries to land some big shots. But the thing is, like, his chin is a little questionable because he just walks forward so much. He is very, very hittable. And I think that's a big problem when you're talking about a guy like David Onama. He will fight for your money, like I said. This fight is going to be fought at a very, very high pace, as all Nate Landwehr fights do. Winner of this fight should score very well. I do not think we need the judges in this one either. But, man, I just think Onama is too big for him, too strong for him, too fast for him. I just think he's better wherever the fight goes. I think he does put away Nate Landwehr at the end of the day. Now, maybe I'm not saying there's a little bias there because I've loved him so much. But in Dallas, when I was at the fights, I had a bunch of UFC fighters around me. He was right in front of me talking. He talked with him. I talked with him more than any other fighters there. He was like, who should I call out after I get the win? And I was researching him. I said Dan Ige, and him and his buddy absolutely loved it. So if you somehow hear him get on the mic and call out Dan Ige, I got to take a little prop there, but I'm excited for this one.
I'll be rooting for it. And then
I don't think it's going to happen, but I really hope so.
we'll hope for it with Onama over Landwehr. KO, how do you think he gets the job done?
Yeah, I think he KOs him. I'm saying first round too.
First round KO. All right. I'm sure you'll have a ton, obviously, for DFS if that's the case. Keg, what do you see between Onama and Landwehr?
Yeah.
Ooh, going against
go again. I figured one of the vets of the sport, kind of all that against one of the younger dudes. I mean,
yeah.
So like,
how do you have no respect for the vets of the sport, man? Come on.
I just respect the young bucks.
Listen, like the overwhelming sentiment. Like, I watch the show I watch every UFC card live on the Kcasts. We have about 35, 40 people that are in the YouTube chat. And like, the overwhelming consensus has been nobody's really impressed yet with what we've seen from David Onama in the UFC so far. And I think he was losing that fight against Armfield before he got that sub. And like, I think that Nate Landwehr, yes, he's been knocked out 2 times, okay? But he was really highly thought of when he was the featherweight champ at M1 Global. And, you know, he takes the step to the big show. And when you see the names that Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard match him up with immediately, you can tell how high they were on him. Arosa, Klein, Herbert Burns, a veteran like Elkins. the issues that Landwehr had against Gilbert Burns and Erosa, I think is really emblematic of his issues in general. He gets into striking wars with fighters that he has no business doing so.
I mean, Herbert Burns knocked him out, man. That was his only knockout he's had. Like, that's the biggest concern.
Yeah.
If Herbert Burns is knocking you out, there's something wrong.
I think, though, like, if David Onama doesn't knock him out, I think he's going to lose.
Oh, it's a dog. Yeah, I mean.
You know what I mean?
Oh, Landwehr is a dog. If you don't knock Landwehr out, you're in a war for 15 minutes. So I totally get what you're saying.
If he's going to win the fight and continue to be successful, he needs to implement that wrestling heavy game plan, because his wrestling pace and cardio are there to really lean on. Title said it all about Onama. Obviously, he's one of James Krause's guys. And yes, he has 10 wins, 10 finishes. Yes, he has the power and hand speed in the pocket to be a problem, but this kid has not fought anybody worth their salt except Mason Jones, and it's his only loss as a pro.
Mobley?
I mean, he's okay.
I mean, he's beating Herbert Burns.
Yeah, well, I mean, Herbert Burns isn't that good, which doesn't say much for Nate Landwehr. I get it.
I get what you're saying.
So,
I mean, somehow Onama's over minus 300 now, and it was like minus 225.
I'm gonna pick David Onama to win the fight, because he's a big defensive liability on the feet, Nate. Okay, I think you can hurt him. But from a betting perspective, we can't pay the price on somebody that's still that unproven. So the two props that sticks out to me would either be taking the shot that Landwehr can weather the storm and get the fight in around 2 and 3 and use that wrestling edge decision wise. And that's like 5.5 to 1. If not taking the shot there, you're going with the game plan that Onama catches him early and probably wins in the first half of the fight. So the best angle that I saw over at DraftKings was Onama and the under 1.5 rounds plus 140, which I think is available at DK still, which isn't a bad way to approach Onama. But aside from that, it's a pass for me.
All right. That's Onama, Landwehr, a little bit of disagreement there between Keg and Title, the young buck versus the old veteran. Not surprising to see the disagreement. The main fight, though, on this card, the main event, is two veterans, Dominic Cruz, Marlon Chito Vera. It is Chito Vera. That's a pretty big favorite here, minus 240 or so. We've seen Cruz's chin start to go a little bit. He's obviously getting a little bit long in the tooth. I'm pulling for Chito Vera here. I'm just not a fan of Dominic Cruz. I don't like him as an announcer.
I wrote that in my notes. I loathe him as a human being in my notes.
I'm not a fan. So my pick was Vera. I don't care. I'm just going with Chito Vera here. The line, though, does seem like a little wide to me, but just because I can't stand Dominic Cruz. So there you go. There's my analysis for this fight. Keg, do better than me. Break down this fight for us.
Yeah, I mean, listen, man. First of all, if you like Chito Vera, everybody knows he basically drops the first round in every fight. Yep. He starts slow. So you just hopefully Dominic Cruz wins the first round, and then you can get on Chito live at a way better price going into round 2. That's how I would approach it if you want to bet him. I have been on the fence all week. My thought process has been, do I take Dominic Cruz by decision at plus 275 pre-fight and just go with that? Or do I bet Chito live after round 1? And I still haven't really made up my mind. I'm interested to see what Title has to say. Maybe he can sway me. At the end of the day, I just think that people don't realize how hard it is to time Dominic Cruz and actually put together a cohesive striking game plan against him. He's got the most ridiculous footwork in the history of the sport, and it's not even close. And not only that, it's despite the injuries and all the reconstructive knee surgeries, it's still elite. his footwork at least. Now, Chito Vera, the one thing I think he has going for him in this fight is Dominic Cruz was not graced with the gift of power. He does not have power. He throws a ton of volume. If he wins this fight, it is definitely going to be by decision. So Chito probably is not going to respect him much and try to live in the pocket against him, but it's going to be very hard for him to hit him consistently. So I think Dominic Cruz has a much better chance to win this fight than the odds say that he does. So I'm still on the fence. You know what? I'm going with the upset. I'm picking Cruz on the show. I'm picking him by decision plus 275.
I know what's gonna happen. It's Cruz. I'm gonna be pissed off because Cruz dances his way to another decision. I feel like I could last 5 rounds in there with Cruz without his hands are so.
Yeah, you could. You'll lose all 5. But
yeah, no, I will never hit him. I'll be outstruck like 450, but
yeah,
standing there.
Yep.
Definitely not. But you get the point. Title, come on, give me some Chito Vera. Give me some confidence in Chito Vera.
I mean, one guy you think you could be in there with 25 minutes with, and one guy you can't.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, but I think it's clearly Chito Vera. One guy, Chito's not going to have any concern about what Dominic's throwing to him at his way. And yeah, Cruz is definitely going to be concerned what's coming his way. Pedro Munoz just dropped Dominic Cruz. Chito Vera, man, is going to be there. I mean, Chito Vera can fight 25 rounds. Dude's cardio is out of this world. His power.
Do you think he'll drop the first round?
Yeah. No, I'm with you on how to bet the fight. You wait till after the first round. He always does. I mean, you say that. I think he won the Rob Font one first round. But at the end of the day, I agree with you. You don't bet this fight pre-flop. You bet it after the first round. That's what Chito has done in his whole career. But man, like, I'm not a Cruz guy either at the end of the day. And that's not as much for his announcing and all that. Like, the dude has pillow hands. It's footwork, it's pillow hands. What are the judges? What have they been grading, I guess, so to speak, lately? Damage. Look at the Rob Font Chito Vera fight. Rob Font outlanded him by a lot. He won no rounds in that one. That's a typical Chito Vera fight, because when he does hit you, it hurts, whether it's a leg kick, whether it's jab, power shot, and all of that. Cruz chin has definitely been solid throughout his career. He's 37 years old now. You're talking about 2 UFC vets. Chito Vera is only 29, DC. He is a UFC vet. He's been in the sport for a long time. He's fought all the best in the world for sure. He seems to be at the prime right now of his career, and just everything seems to be going for him. Man, I think he gets Dominic Cruz out of there at some point in this fight. Now, this is not a fight. I will have fades of this main event in DFS, even though it's priced 8,500, 7,700. Cruz's footwork, the bigger cage people aren't talking about, which benefit to Cruz. Cruz has had very, very good defensive striking. So this could be a lower output stuff. But man, I do not think Cruz is going to hurt Chito at all. I think judges are going to see that. And I think Chito is going to hurt Cruz multiple times, maybe even put him away. So, man, Chito's a very, very tough fight for anybody in this division. He's coming, man. He's a tough fight. I think Chito gets it done.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, talking about a minus 240 favorite. So you taking Cruz, I'm not going to say no either. Sure. I get it.
I do like your point about possibly fading this main event from DFS purposes, because you can see this fight where it's Cruz could even get a couple of takedowns here. And then,
I would be a little surprised to see him use his wrestling, to be honest, but he could.
He could. And also, there just could be long periods of this fight where Cruz is dancing around, landing some strikes that do absolutely nothing. And Chito Vera's trying to line up, the big punch, and maybe eventually he gets it, but he's probably not going to score very well. Chito Vera.
There's 12 other fights on this card. We're not talking about 10 like last week.
I don't think either of these fighters are putting up a huge number. So I get that. I get the fade there. Hopefully Chito Vera knocks him out hard enough where Cruz has to take some time off the mic as well. That's my official list for this fight. But yeah, that'll do it. That's all 13 fights. Should be a fun card. A lot of fairly closely lined fights. Hopefully they all go down without issue. And we're going to see some spread out ownership from a DFS perspective, I think, which makes for a fun DFS slate. That'll do it for today. We'll be back next week on Saturday, I believe at noon Eastern time for UFC. I think it's 278. Big
11 Eastern.
Card. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 11 Eastern. Yeah. Should be a good one next week. So we'll be back on Saturday next week. Thanks for joining us. As always, once again, if you want to join us over at Run Pure Sports, you can use promo code NFL15. That will get you 15% off, not only your first month, but the life of your subscription, so long as you stick with us. That will do it for Keg. For Title, I'm DC, and we'll check you next time.
Good luck, everybody.